INDX Global. In conversation with Arc Daily and Design Boom, powered by Woodvisor.
Welcome, the three of you. My name is Claire Brodke, and we're here with INDX Global at Milan Design Week, hosting a couple of podcast sessions that I'm very excited for. And this one is called Adaptive Legacies. And I'm here with three very special people. I'd love for you all to just quickly introduce yourselves. We could start with you and move to the right, and then we'll dive into questions.
Myself, Kiran Gala from Kiran Gala and Associates in Mumbai. Almost here in this field, more than 40 years into this field, and very much happy to be here in this Build 99 and everyone loves you.
Thank you, Vivek Gupta from Arvind Vivek and Associates, Delhi. Like Karen, carrying a legacy, 40 plus years of practicing out of Delhi. Extremely delighted to be here with all of you doing this podcast in Milan. Thank you, Design Boom, all of you guys for doing this for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carl Bhesania. I'm a Senior Director of Architecture at Talati & Partners. And yes, 25 years in this industry, and very, very happy to be here in Milan for this podcast. Thank you for having us here.
Thank you all. So we'll start with an easy question. No, I'm kidding.
They're
all
easy.
easy. Obviously, this panel is called Adaptive Legacies, so that's what we'll be talking about, adaptive reuse, adapting buildings to current standards, new standards, and if that is even the right way to go about things. So I'd love to kick us off with, the question of how do we reuse and adapt, which is something that you all do without losing the cultural and historical heritage of a building.
Okay.
Well, I think to me, I would like to start with, cultures and cities which are old cities. And London is a prime example of a city which is a really good example of adaptive reuse. If you see the entire area around the Thames, which used to be earlier wharfs, they've got converted into multiple uses. They've adapted those buildings which are wharfs. They've kept the same kind of alleys, same kind of structures, but adapted them to use of modern ways of living. It could be malls, it could be shopping, it could be museums, it could be even residences. I think London, to me, always remains one of the finest examples of adaptive reuse. Even the areas around St. Paul's Cathedral, or how they have merged both the heritage buildings with extremely modern facades, keeping the sanctity of that building, the heritage building, intact. So for all of us, I think, to me at least, personally, I think London is one of the finest examples of adaptive reuse of buildings.
Yeah. But I think when we do start thinking about adaptive reuse, it's more important to understand what was to find the soul of that particular building. At the end of the day, there has been an architect who's designed this particular building with some thought in mind. So we need to understand when we start with any kind of project which we need to reuse, we need to understand what necessarily needs to be retained.
Right.
It could be the emotion, it could be the architecture, and of course there will be, when you say about history, right? So history doesn't really mean just the facade of the building. At the end of the day, it's about the structure, the circulation, the way the inhabitants have actually stayed in that building over the years. And when we generally start a building, we don't ask the question of how to modernize it. We ask the question of what needs to be essentially retained.
Right.
And there are various layers to an adaptive reuse process, right? So certain layers we need to kind of retain. Certain layers of that building could be reinterpreted, perhaps, and certain layers could just be simply replaced to make the building work eventually. So I think that's what we need to find the soul of the project and try to retain that.
Right, it's more of an excavation process than anything else.
Sorry, you would continue?
Please. Please.
So as he rightly said, the soul is very important. Like if you look at in India, So lots of our old palaces, which were supposed to be meant for home for the kings and all these people, now is getting converted into the nice resorts, hotels, and hospitality field. But as he rightly said, the soul is retained.
Right.
That was the very much like royalty. When you go to all this, I think even some of the places in Scotland and Spain also they're doing the same thing. So the retaining the originality as the charm of old world, the heritage things and everything. Every architect is trying to re-put in a reuse the same things, keeping the heritage, the culture, and even the if you see the staff over there, they have been trained in a such a way, or they've been using, and they treat you like you are a king in that particular places. So I think that is the perfect way to adopt all
Right.
these things. So that is the way to go.
I would completely disagree with both of them because there is a way of there are examples of silos which were earlier silos getting converted into commercial offices.
Right.
There are examples of tombs and those kind of structures getting converted into a Starbucks cafe.
I love that you
So-
bring this up because I was going to say the same thing. So
Yeah,
keep
so-
going, keep going.
to me, I think no, we need to. So the idea is that you're retaining the structure, and the structure is there because of the history of that
Yeah.
structure.
Yeah.
But the adaptive reuse, to me, would not be to carry on the same kind of reuse, to drastically transform. Because you also realize that they've lived their time. The tomb in India, we're dotted with these different tombs and everything. And those tombs are in a way barricaded, and nobody, not even a child, goes to play there.
Right.
So it's a vestigial part of that city, of that urban infrastructure, or something like that. And how can you integrate that into the urban fabric back again?
Yeah.
Is to put it to an adaptive reuse, which could, like I'm saying, why not open a Starbucks there,
Right.
so that people start going there, and that structure lives again in a new avatar. So I
Correct,
think
of course.
to me, yeah.
I mean, you
But
need
it's
to.
the same,
yeah,
Carl.
but that's
If
the whole
that,
point.
That
I mean,
palace, if no one is staying, king is
Yeah,
not
yeah.
staying,
Correct.
and they can't afford that expenses,
Yeah.
it's a better to use it in
Yeah.
a nicer
100%.
way.
I agree
So
with
that
you.
they have
Adaptive-
converted into two.
Correct.
No,
Like
I was reacting to when
so-
you said that the layers have to be kept like that, because
Yeah, so no, so what I
because
mean
it's
is,
every
so what I
independent
mean is,
structure that.
when I talk about the layer, let's say the facade is retained, right?
Yeah, of
So that's
course,
one layer that
that's
you
all,
retain.
of course, without
The user could always change, and the user
Yes.
is going to keep on changing.
Yes,
Yeah.
But
always.
we have to find a way to make that building still remain prominent the way it was
It was
envisioned to be,
actually.
and then the users can
Well,
always
that's
keep
another
changing.
that's another interesting question, right? Because
So,
I think
so one,
there's-
one point I will put it here. There was a one where we went in Germany. There was old jail, which was a prison, and then they converted into a hotel.
Yeah.
And what a fantastic way they have converted into a
Yes.
hotel, which was, I think, people specially come for that experience, that
Yeah.
how the jail was there, and they,
Yeah.
so it's the honor is different,
Yeah.
the perception is different, but they have retained the originality,
Correct.
but you get to see all how those prisons and everything were there. They have
Right.
retained all,
And they do
all these
retain it
things.
still as a prison.
Yes,
In-
yes.
Not in the true sense.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
But,
but
the
yes,
soul of that
people
place
come here
is
to take that experience.
yes, no, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And I
one
think-
way of doing that.
Sorry,
Yeah,
also.
I think that's interesting because I think when you were speaking earlier, I was thinking about scale because you brought up the palaces,
Yeah.
and I think that is one instance where the idea of adaptive reuse is very romantic, right? We
Yes.
want to keep as much of this like beautiful splendor as we can,
Yeah.
but when you mentioned the silos, which is why I'm happy that you did, there's what about the non-romantic buildings?
Yeah,
What
sure.
about elements
Yeah.
of buildings? What if something can't be kept, like the prison example? What if something can't, in its original blueprint, be adapted?
Correct,
In a way that might be, in this case, fun or useful. What about the buildings where you can only do 30%, 60%,
Yeah.
80%? How does that impact?
So, as
that
I said about the
translation?
layers, the third layer was that certain things that need to be replaced.
Yeah.
There is no point in conserving a building out of sentiments
Yes.
Yes.
and not make it usable.
That's where function takes over.
That's where
Yes.
function takes over. But certain parts of those buildings could be retained. The positioning, the light that comes in, the facade, probably the materiality to it.
Right.
If it doesn't work at the end of the day, there is no point in conserving for sentiments. A conservation project works well, adaptive reuse works well when it's made for the contemporary lifestyle of the new inhabitants. be it residential, be it commercial. That's how you're supposed to. So even if it's 30%, you try and retain it as much as you can. Try to find the soul that we spoke about initially, and then make the most of it. Because at the end of the day, it has to be functional, it has to be sturdy, it has to be safe for the new inhabitants.
How do you keep flexibility when, I think, because when function comes in, right, especially if we're talking about a Starbucks, which is a very specific function, let's just
Right.
take that example.
Right.
How do you still keep flexibility with something that is so specific when you're designing these reused buildings?
So there is this today cities, like I was in Berlin the other day, and the city is now saying that any old edifice that needs to be retained, supposing there's an emotional and also a historical context to the whole thing. So there are hotels that have the facade of the old building, and there is a new steel structure
Right.
which is right behind it, which the windows are also
Yeah.
commensurating to the facade, and you make the hotel. So it is just that. So this is also a policy decision that when you say that, okay, I mean, this is where the practicality comes into picture, that there's no point, it's neither a palace nor something which is redeemable. So what do you do with that? But you still want, when you're going in the old streets, India is full of these cities which are years and years
Yes.
old. So if you want to maintain the same facade, so what do you do? Because the buildings are derelict completely. So you keep the facade, strengthen it to the extent possible that you are, in a way, you
That
kind
needs
of,
to be safe.
you're
Yeah.
restoring it.
Right.
And the rest of it is not worth restoring because the sizes have changed,
Yeah.
and the use could not be the same, maybe the staircases were very narrow and everything. So this Berlin hotel, I'm forgetting the name, I think it was Marriott or something that we were staying in, and the entire hotel at the back was independent structure, which was a steel structure,
Right.
and done. But from outside, it seemed.
But that's a
like-
controversy in itself, isn't it? When you see these old structures and then some modernist architect comes and pops in something onto it.
Is
Some
that
say
still
it looks
adaptive
alien.
reuse?
Is it still adaptive reuse? Because it still looks alien
Yeah.
when you
No,
just have a
but
part of
sometimes
it.
This was
and
the facade
it-
was the same. It was
Correct.
just that
Yeah.
you didn't even feel. Even the porch was same.
Yeah.
So,
But if you-
little intervention is always required. That's
True.
what
I
I'm
mean,
saying.
if you see the Toronto Museum,
Yeah.
Exactly, I was about to say
Yeah.
that. So
And
how
you s-
nicely it has
and you
been
s-
put together.
and then it's kind of a
Yes.
merger between
The old
completely
building
modern
and the
and
new
new,
one. Yes.
and they've kind of made it work.
You know,
Kind of, but it's again, I'm on the fence on
Even
that
at
yet.
some
Whether
point-
it works or no, but
at one point, even if you see the Louvre,
Yes.
so the entire structure which is
Yeah.
standing with all this palatial and all these things, which is, and in middle of that, the very modern architecture as a pyramid. So when I am Pi was
Yeah,
supposed
yeah,
to,
yeah.
it did, and there was a lot of controversy.
there
How-
was. He did receive a lot of flack for it though.
Yes.
To
So
have
but-
the glass
Which we
pyramid
But
now
right
still,
there.
today, if we
Yeah.
look at to that, I think personally to me, it was the best decision that they made this
Yes.
glass
fully
pyramid
agree
at the
with that.
process.
Yeah, fully agree.
So
with
that was the fantastic blend.
Yeah.
It was, had it been something the same repetition, it would have lost its identity.
completely.
And this was the
No,
best.
but
result.
it's just pure design. It's so subjective.
Exactly.
Someone
that
would
how,
say-
how well it has been perceived.
Yeah, and someone would say Taj Mahal should have been in black marble. Why is it in white?
Yeah.
I mean, it's as simple as black and white, you know.
Well,
It's
this
so
is, I think, what you mentioned, where the emotions come in, right? And then the hotel facade, I think, is a great example because from the exterior, from the flow of movement of the user or visitor in this case into the building, you're keeping the emotional aspect,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what you're saying as
Yeah.
well, is the emotional subjectivity of the experience of a building, which is what anything comes down to, especially adaptive reuse, I think.
Right.
Also I think it needs a policy. So the policymaker who decides. So somebody who took the decision of allowing that glass pyramid to come in
Yeah.
front of the Louvre is what it takes the guts to.
Yes.
Yes.
And also do sensitively. And it's not, Carl, to me, it's not just an intervention which has been there as a whim of an architect. It's also because if you realize the U-shaped Louvre
Yes.
buildings, old
Yeah.
buildings, it was difficult. So it's this
Yes.
thing which allows you to go to the basement
Yeah.
and then
And
go to
then
these
be
buildings
dispersed.
individually
Yes.
without being
Correct.
out and about.
And it's
This
a,
is a practical
It was, I think,
solution.
best conceived by the architect.
Yeah, I think
now
it's
that not
phenomenal.
depend on the how the architect is
Correct.
really using it.
Using it.
No, but
Who's
you need,
putting-
as he rightly said, you need gutsy policymakers
Yes.
as well
Yeah.
to
Yes.
back that
it
that
needs to
vision
work
of an
in
architect.
tandem, yeah, and
Yeah, it's a team.
City
Yeah,
planning.
the city
and all
has
of
to
that, yeah.
back it up.
And if we stay with that specific example, it's a quite a brave decision, I think, in terms of compression and release to
Yeah.
not make the space below the
True.
pyramid that's open, right? And then
Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
moving into the old buildings,
Building.
and you have to kind of
Yeah,
duck.
yeah.
Which I think that's such a for an entrance hall, that was such a brave
Amazing.
thing to
Bold,
do.
I
very
think
bold.
that's
Yeah.
That's one of
such
the
a
best
good-
examples.
Yeah, examples of.
As a blend of modern architecture.
And I think also the choice of the material, the glass being
Yes.
transparent,
Exactly.
it's not standing in front as a
Yeah.
making a
Obstruction,
statement,
yeah.
as a making a statement. It's just to kind of visibly dilute itself with the rest of the structure.
Because
So,
you look through it.
yeah,
Exactly,
you
and
can-
then at night you have a whole different,
Yeah.
then it's an artifact in and of
Correct.
itself
Beautiful.
within a museum
Yeah.
context, which is
I
useful.
salute IMP for doing that
Yes.
and giving us a point to talk about.
I know, for like 10 minutes, and we're going on a tangent
You know,
about the
sometimes,
roof. But.
sometimes this kind of blend, I believe and I feel that this is the only thing that gives a city that special touch. Sometimes when there is a new modern cities like Dubai and all that, we say the city don't have the soul. They don't have those things.
Yes.
But these all things, this is what it gives that city a particular things.
Yeah.
They are, instead of just modern glass, concrete, and everything that is not really something. But why we talk about all these cities is because of the blend of this modern and old world together. I think that is where the nostalgic and all the
No, so maybe
old
after
history is coming.
maybe
to
after
this.
another 50, 60 years, there'll be
Maybe.
another panel talking
Yes.
about adaptive reuse of the Burj
Burj
Khalifa.
I was going to say, Dubai.
Yeah.
So Dubai's adaptive
Yeah,
reuse.
then it
That's
is
going to be a new
true,
topic
true.
altogether.
I mean, it will, and this is,
Yeah.
this is all. I think the time factor. All of these cities that you just mentioned, in our span of a human's lifetime, they're babies. This is nothing.
Nothing, yeah.
It's nothing. It's a blip in a cosmos that's
Yeah.
like so much bigger.
Yeah.
So I guess one question to all of you, if we're diving into your personal projects, and you're designing with kind of time as a co-designer, if you're adapting spaces, how does that? Do you have a specific methodology of going? I know you mentioned a little bit earlier about your steps. So maybe the two of you can elaborate on how you specifically kind of approach a project like that when it's first come to you.
So we did a school in Dubai, Al-Qas, which is before the settlement came about there. And there was also the entire thing about making a school which had to be obviously self-sustainable in terms of making money and everything. So what we had to do, the client approached us and said, this is my challenge. There were two challenges there. One was because it's a co-ed school, and also the girls and the boys side was different. So how do you have common facilities at the same time segregating them? And the other was, the school timing is morning to whatever afternoon. What does happen to all the facilities? The school had to be air conditioned, so there was a lot of energy wastage and everything that was happening. And the cost involved in making that school was rather huge. So we came out with the option that obviously that was within the school, that how the gates would shut, and at certain time when the labs are open for the girls, then the gates would shut and the labs are open for the boys. So that was using the same facility for two different ergonomies and demographies. But then what we did was we suggested that post the school timing, all the settlement, the housing and everything that's coming about, why don't you give them an option, because they were themselves developing. So why don't you give them the option of using this space as a club? So in the evening, all the school facilities of swimming pool, all the playgrounds, all the basketball, everything got converted into a
public space.
It's a playground for the
that's
senior
amazing.
citizens, and I mean for everybody, for the residents. So this is how that was an adaptive reuse of the same thing without necessarily being an old building which is being used.
Right.
It's a use, not adaptive or whatever, but it's a use for a larger demography rather than being specific. So similarly, like a whole, and also the school was going to get converted into coaching centers for different, what is it called, hobbies or something like that. So the classrooms were going to be used like that. The auditorium was going to be used to be leased out to people to have functions or something like that. Not marriage functions or something like that, but functions, cultural functions,
Events.
events and everything.
And this
So
is speaking to the flexibility point,
Yeah, the
right?
flexibility. So I think that, and on the same topic, I think post-COVID, I think a whole lot of buildings need to have adaptive reuse. Very simple.
Yes.
Very
Work
simple.
from home. There are I think millions of square feet that are going to get wasted now. Further going forward another 10, 15 years, I feel with the cloud kitchen, with Zomatos and service and dark kitchens, you won't need so many restaurants, You perhaps won't even need restaurants. So I think that's a very healthy sign for me because we will not be building so much. We
Right.
don't need to build so much. Maybe that's the greenest way of having sustainability.
You
But
took
wouldn't
away
you
my
always want to
question.
go? Wouldn't you always want to go to a nice restaurant, and at
It's
the
a-
end of the day
I
and
know, I
not
would
be
be very
in your
sad if
home
restaurants
environment
So
and
yes,
have the delivery guy come in?
exactly.
You would like to go out.
So
You would
Exactly,
like
because
to.
70% of the time, Kiran, you go to a restaurant for the 30% of the times you also go just to eat. So I'm talking about those 30%, and even if there is a reduction of 30% of those restaurants or built areas, I'm not worried about the restaurant.
We
or
can slim
office.
down the
slim
gastronomy
down the
sector.
construction.
Yes.
Yes, that's a very good. But ultimately, we as a human, we are a social people.
Yeah.
The humanity, entire thing lives on a socialism, like everyone. If you put like yourself, if 3 days, 4 days in a one particular area, no, let's go out. But as you rightly said, you would be going for something better. You would be going back to the nature instead of just sitting in the restaurant or
Right.
cafes or all that things.
Yeah.
You can go if those places are used for some very concrete and very much added next to the nature, where you can go for different purpose
Right.
instead of just eating out.
Right.
That's,
You mentioned the greenest building. I'd like to come back to that.
Okay.
In terms
and
of
one small
yes.
thing I'll put here, that's not
Of course.
exactly the thing that you said. What you said, the same used for a different purpose. We were discussing, of course, that project didn't turn up. In a Panchkini, in nearby to Mumbai, there is a place called Mahabaleshwar, and Panchkini is a place. So one of these our community, they decided to have a home for the old age people,
Mhm.
and they asked us to put something like a footprint and something what can be done, and we just gave them a thought that the people who is healthy but they are maybe a singles or maybe they would like to. So the best is to put next to the. There is a children hostels, a lot of schools in Panchkini. So give them something where children can come and play with them. The old people, they just want to, they don't know how to pass the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they need a
So
purpose.
if they
They
have
feel to be,
children also
yeah,
in a close
needed.
vicinity,
Yeah.
so both the children will get some elderly instead, not mother and father or a grandfathers, but they will get someone who is elderly whom they look for some guidance, and these people will have a nice
Yeah.
correlation
Interaction.
And the
between two
relevance,
interaction.
the relevance here is because this place has a lot of residential schools.
Yes.
So the kids are
Panchkini.
already away from their families.
Families.
Right.
That's
So
what I
that
think.
we had proposed them that okay, let's have something like this. At least 2 hours children can come and play there
Yeah.
with those people. But that was also like a one idea. That's
Yeah, no, that's lovely. And again, it's about, I think going beyond the building, right? I think that is
Yes.
something that is crucial for these adaptive thoughts. And it doesn't, as you mentioned before, it doesn't have to be
Yes.
an old building. And we'll talk about that again after. But this idea of the echo that building sends throughout the neighborhood, throughout the community, and how you can incorporate that and switch functions, not by necessarily making the building modular or
yeah.
but using the same, designing in a way, even if it's something that's so specific as a school, designing still that in a way with a swimming, like you can't do much with a swimming pool, it's there, right?
Correct, yeah.
But inviting other people to use it makes it adaptable because
Yep.
the flexibility remains, and I think that's the same
Yeah.
for you. In your project, do you have a recent one that you'd like to tell us about where it's in terms of adaptability and function?
Yep. So there is this project that we are doing. It's an old mill compound,
Mhm.
and most of the project needs to be demolished where the old mill would stand, because that's where we need to build the new building, right? Because the plan, the everything changes, right? The orientations and everything, and we are making a sales gallery into that one particular mill block,
Right.
which we are retaining, and which eventually we are going to keep it as the clubhouse of that space. And it took some convincing to convince the clients, that we need to retain this particular part of it. Of course, we are almost doing 70% of refurbishment, including the facade,
Right.
strengthening the structure. It's someone might just say, remove the entire thing and build a replica. It'll still be faster.
Faster, yes.
But then again, we are just adding more to the carbon footprint, right? By doing demolition and then again reconstructing. So we're trying to make the most of it.
Right.
30% would be retained, and it's quite exciting. We're still in the design stages of it.
Exciting, I'm sure.
But it's going to be quite interesting, and then and once we got the client hooked on to the idea of kind of retaining that part for the sales gallery as of now, And the way it works is, it has to be done a little slyly, I'll say,
Yes.
because the client wants to build a sales gallery, right? He has to spend on the structure. So the way we try to convince him is that you're saving the cost
Yes.
for building something new,
And
Right.
also
and
time,
then
right?
time, and then let's retain that. And then we kind of convince them to, let's make a clubhouse out of it. Now the marketing team is all excited, and we want to create curate a whole theme around that particular old school mill concept.
Super.
So
yeah, that
that's
is
why-
very nice.
That is cool, and I think that's also touching on a point that I've discussed with some of your colleagues in previous sessions is
Right.
the fact that you need to, especially when you're dealing with clients, right? You need to speak their language. It's all about communication. It's all about language, and knowing their priorities.
Right,
In
of
this
course.
case, it was a cost issue,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
knew that this was
Correct.
that was what they needed to hear.
Correct. Yeah.
Because sometimes, and I'd love to hear more about this. Are there instances where you've had the will or the wish to keep more of the building or not demolish and like in your case,
Yeah.
and the client has just outright said no. Like how do you deal with that?
See, we in our firm we have a belief that, it's our job to try and convince the client. So we have a saying, right? We tell the client once, we tell the client twice. Third time, the client is always right. That's
Okay.
yeah.
I have a
At the
statement.
end of the day, we need to run the firm as well, right?
Yes,
let's
100%.
let's call a spade a spade,
I need to learn from you.
right?
And they
So-
did hire you for a reason.
Yeah, they did, right?
So
To
Claire,
do
I have a
justice to their
statement to,
vision.
I have a statement to make here.
Please.
That statement is buildings need to die.
Interesting. I thought you might be moving into that direction. Keep going.
So the reason is very simple.
He has a vision of coming in with
You're
a
on the
bulldozer.
wrong
right?
panel, my friend.
The reason it's a very simple reason. And when you design a building, all of us,
Yes.
isn't there is a life cycle of a project? You use your material.
Mm-hmm.
Everything comes with a you're using a certain material because it's going to last 50 years. And the life cycle of that particular material only 50 years. A brick or a steel that can get rusted in coastal areas or something like that. So why just for the sake of it? And please trust me that why are we selling our grandparents' buildings, or homes that they built,
Yeah.
or the great grandparents' homes that they built? It's not that we do not have an emotional attachment to it. Everybody has great
Of
emotional
course,
attachment
yeah.
to the building that
And
you
we've talked
grew
about
up
that,
in. Yeah. But the thing is that it becomes untenable. The repairs, the piping that was done was 70 years back, and it was GI pipe, the galvanized iron pipe. It rusts, it doesn't give you the
It's
water
unhealthy.
pressure that you.
Yeah.
So why? You can't keep that going. So there is a life cycle of a project, and they need to just die. So you need to demolish them with all emotional attachment and everything, and make a far more sustainable, far more practical home on a building there. And sometimes, like I said, these are eyesores. So much as you might say that I might be living in a neighborhood where there is a derelict building, and it is also disturbing the entire ecology around because of just being there, and it's not being repaired, and it doesn't look clean, it doesn't look neat, and also it's giving rise to a dead building is not just psychologically disturbing, but it also could be a place for crime. It could be a place for
sure.
all of that. So I think we need to look at it from a practical point of view. And one of the biggest examples right now, and they can all debate about it, is in
Please.
New Delhi, which is the Central Vista. It's one of
Yeah.
the largest projects in the country,
Yeah.
where there are buildings which are built by Britishers or after Britishers, but they were government buildings. They were just offices
Right.
with no particular architecture, no sense. But just the fact that they're 70-year-old doesn't mean that we retain them.
Right.
In fact, if I was the architect of those buildings, I would have said, please demolish them because they've lived their life and make something which is more relevant today, more practical today, and that's what's happening. And there's a huge debate in our country about those buildings, and I'm one of those. And that's where I coined the sentence that buildings need to die. And it's all right for buildings to die and new structures to come.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
where
exactly
do you
what
draw
he
the
says.
line in the timeline?
That-
As I
Exactly.
said, for example,
that again, I'm
like-
saying. again,
Also, it's like a coexistence. Sometimes you have to be wise
you have
enough
to
what
be.
to retain and what to go.
So the
There has to
President
be a
House,
line
the
to be drawn
President
in
House
between,
and
yeah.
North and South Block is staying, which are really the Lutyens buildings, which are good buildings. The others were done by PWD department of
Correct.
Britishers.
Right.
Yes,
Which
yes,
is-
they should go.
They should go.
definitely.
Yeah, that's
Certain-
exactly what I'm saying.
That's-
Yeah.
You have to be wise enough what
right,
to retain,
exactly.
what is the really a cultural heritage or real really a
Correct.
heritage.
Yeah.
Define them wisely.
Yeah. That's why we
And it
discussed,
cannot be
right?
just by the age of a
After-
building. Not
Definitely,
by
what
the
you
age of
say,
a building.
all the services are all outdated. There
Correct.
has to go.
Yeah.
You have to adapt
No, I
new
mean,
things.
imagine as I said, I pointed this out earlier as well. 70 years, 80 years, 100 years down the line, when people will talk about Dubai,
Yeah.
That's right.
are they really going to think of it as a heritage? We don't know.
No.
They
For
will,
example,
of
the
course.
how the entire Europe, I mean, it's all adaptive reuse, right? Or every building that we see,
Yeah,
even in
literally.
Milan here, every
Yeah.
We
building.
are in Milan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
We
every
live in a
building
city.
Maybe
is-
100, 200, 300 year
Correct,
old
exactly,
buildings.
yeah, yeah.
Venice, they have 400-year-old building.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
But
absolutely.
I'll tell you a practical example. I live in a building which is 100 years old,
Wow.
right?
Which is old for,
Yeah.
It's old.
Bombay.
In Mumbai, yes. And
South Bombay.
the second, I mean, we are in talks for redevelopment. I'm pretty sure we're not going to retain anything out of it, right?
Yeah,
Because the
of course.
developer is going to come in and knock my building off
Yeah.
because he needs to build a 70-story building
flashy
there,
high rise.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm the one who's designing it anyway. So,
That's architect.
more than the building you are king, brother.
no, but I'll tell you, it doesn't make sense to retain it. As you rightly said, there
Yeah.
are certain buildings which don't really trigger your nostalgia.
Yes.
So those need to go.
Which is very
Yeah.
interesting that you yourself, as an inhabitant of that old
Yeah.
building, say that.
Yeah.
But I think this again, this whole discussion comes down. That again is kind of a policy issue, right? Is there is no clear. It shouldn't, and I agree with you. It shouldn't just be the age. It's not. It's not a
Yeah.
number that.
Yeah.
It needs to be, as you said, more of. Okay, does this have cultural relevance? Does this have a legacy of its
Correct,
own?
exactly.
We're talking about adaptive
It's just not any
legacies.
building
yes.
that you need to,
So I think that the
observe.
legacy part of the adaptive
Yeah.
needs to be stressed here, where it's like, okay, is there, and you said, two parts of the site are being
Blocks, not
retained,
blocks.
and that makes sense because those
Those
are the
really
ones,
good buildings. Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
a good buildings. I mean, there's a whole question
Yeah.
of what makes a good building, but I think in terms of what makes a good building for adaptive reuse,
Correct.
maybe that's
That's the question you need to
maybe
ask.
that's a question, right? Like, what, in your opinions, what are the qualities that a building needs to have in order to be able to be a good adaptive reuse project?
Just the fact that it's an envelope. An envelope, like, say for instance, a mall, shopping mall. Now, malls are dying in this country, in our country at least. The malls are dying, the entire culture. And there was a time malls were booming. Even the tier 2, 3 cities, everywhere, the
Yeah.
only construction that was happening was shopping malls. Now they are lying derelict like how, and that's the main reason why, people who invested in them, neither they can sell it because, there's no value of it, nor they can lease it now. It doesn't get rented because the mall is completely, they're trying to revive. So what can be done there? So just the fact that there is an envelope, we need to find use. So in some of the malls, there is the WeWork, the co-working spaces, they've taken over. So there is a ready office space. Just the fact that there's a shelter, there is an envelope there, and now you can demolish the walls, which is shops and all of that, and then reuse them as the entire envelope, and then put it to whatever use you want. They could be gym, they could be like I'm saying, offices. They could be. There are new ways of working that are coming into picture. New uses that are coming into picture now. So this Hyrox is one thing that started
Yes.
in India.
Correct,
It's
yeah.
a huge thing. It
It
needs
is.
a lot of space.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And just
Lots of
imagine
space.
that it is something that needs to be within a closed building.
Yeah.
And imagine
And
that
you
you
need a
have
column-free space.
Yeah,
for it, I mean,
column-free
more or
space.
less, yeah.
So in a mall, shopping mall, what used to be there, so we always had column-free space because the central portion comes free of FAR. So you have a
Yeah.
roof,
A
which is
lovely
covered
skylight.
area.
The
Yeah,
atrium
skylight.
is always well
And just
lit with the
imagine
skylight,
that
yeah.
you put it to use for high rocks. So I'm just saying that any envelope can always be, because nothing is actually, excepting perhaps for a hotel, nothing is or a home is designed for constant use. Anything the use can change. An office can get converted into a restaurant. An office building, which is like a simple span only,
Right.
Yeah.
can get converted into whatever you want. So I
Yeah.
think to me, accepting that you don't have to demolish walls, which is the case in homes, and perhaps a hotel, everything else. And even a hotel can get
I would
used.
say that every new construction or anything which is coming up must be very flexible or adaptive
Absolutely.
Yes.
I
to
agree.
the future.
Absolutely.
Like this was question asked to Geoff Bezos, and like, what would you see another 10 years, and how you vision your company in next 10 years? And he said, stop it. I can maximum visualize for 1,000 days
True that.
Within 3 years, I don't know what will the entire technology, entire system of how we are working, how we living, everything is going to change. I have no vision for
Yes.
10 years. I would just like to focus on what I can do in 3 years. So let's put these things in a different perspective, like how we can put any building or construction that can be as adaptive as possible. It should be as flexible as possible.
Yeah.
So whatever new things should be more adaptive to the next level of
Yes.
what is going to come.
Because we're now so aware of this trend in the technology, and it's an exponential curve, right? This is only going to go faster.
Yeah.
Who would have, like, none of us, I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, would have
Yeah.
thought that 3 years ago, the first AI models came out of
Yes.
the public,
Yeah.
and now we're here.
Yeah.
Which
No,
is,
we could
you know,
actually
crazy.
replace him with Zaha here.
That's
May her
that
soul
is
rest in
true.
peace, but we could actually replace him here, and we could do
I
that.
wasn't so. I was so
I'll
bad.
replace
I
myself.
wasn't
It's
so
fine.
bad to you.
You're going to be here. You're going to be
I'm
here.
so bad to you.
It'll be me. You'll be
I'm
But
replaced.
I think you're completely right in terms of, the flexibility now needs to be key. Because,
Absolutely.
these old beautiful buildings, let's go back to the palaces, those were designed for anything but flexibility.
Right.
Yes.
That was signaling, that was a very specific formula that was being used.
Yeah.
Where there was you can't add variables to that.
Yeah.
That's
Correct.
what I
Yeah.
If we're going on a mathematical
Homes and
tangent.
palaces and
But if, this is the formula needs to be as simple as possible so that you can add, subtract whatever you need.
Yeah.
And that way we become, I think, truly
Yeah, so we are doing one.
I'll put
yeah,
in
please.
one small word here. Like you all know Harari, he wrote this book, Homo sapiens, and that mentioned one single thing. The most, and everyone knows, the most longest lived creature was not the strongest, not the heaviest. That was a cockroach. It survived everything.
Everything.
Yes.
Everything. Why? It's most adaptive. Most adaptive to the natures, all calamities or anything. But it was the most adaptive, and that's why it's surviving.
right.
So that's what, even if our building or anything has to be survived for longer term use, I think we have to be
But
adaptive.
when we design it, we can't really design of thinking of a particular future of the building.
Yes.
Yes.
It should be adaptable for
Any
various
purpose.
futures,
Right.
any purpose. So when we design a building, we've done one building wherein we have a 6,000 square feet floor plate. It's a residential building. We've not given walls, internal walls. We've just curated the facade and the building and the bare shell. But we've sunk in the entire 6,000 square feet of floor plate.
Yeah.
to make a toilet
And you
So
can
you
just,
use it, yes.
and even in the future, if at all, when we talk about this adaptive reuse, I mean, it's very loosely thrown around. But even in Mumbai, when, as you rightly said, there are a lot of malls which are now converting to offices.
Yes.
Now, the sad part to that is they still look like malls from outside. It's not a complete 100% adaptive reuse. The user has changed.
Right.
It's not that you can remove the shop and add an office to it. It should then feel like a commercial establishment. One should want to go and work in a commercial setup, not go where the building still looks like a mall
Right.
and then you're just calling it an office
True.
because the developer just has run out of ideas. So it has to go all the way. It can't just be a change of user. It has to be a change of identity
Yes.
Yes.
in many
That's
cases
very
if you need to reuse it in the right way.
So it will be a
And there has to be
functional shift.
flexibility.
It will be
Yes,
a functional
functional
shift rather
Yeah.
than identity shift. But having said that, we were touching the topic of the future and how do you adapt to the future. It's such a such a stupid thing to even think that when we're designing and we are taking the census for today that there are 60,000 cars and that need to go to a particular place and you need to provide for those 60,000 cars. That's how we plan today.
Right.
Because the norms are also wanting to, we call that
Certainly.
ECS,
Yeah.
equivalent car spaces. We do that. And I've been actually saying that if you're, so many times we do discuss about cities in 2050. And I'm the first one to say, guys, come on, hold on. You don't have to perhaps design for 60,000 cars or whatever, because there would be self-driven cars. You would never need to park a car. The
Right.
cars will always be on the road.
Yeah.
There is no
Or they'll
parking.
come back
They
home.
come
Maybe.
back, or,
Yeah.
or they'll keep
You
going
just
there
sit there and it will drop you and
and
go
drop
back.
you, and then it'll pick up the next guy and all of that. So why are we needing to design that much of parking space? So today, with the changing perception, the changing technology, changing all of that, we need to stay so nimble today in our thought process also. And architects also need to start thinking of just building as little as possible. I think that serves the purpose of sustainability. It serves the purpose of
Yes.
staying very nimble to be able to adapt to whatever is happening.
Right.
So, like Carl's saying, do whatever helps and augments your adaptability.
Right.
So, build bare shells. Start building
Yes.
bare shells.
Yes.
Do not have edifices which are very identifiable to a
Absolutely.
particular use,
No.
and just like boxes. But at the same time, you will say that perhaps these are soulless building. No, I think.
The people make the soul.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
It's the use,
That's
the
the right
people that in a city. Just imagine as much green that could be around that building, and you build a little. I
Yes.
think that'll be the way to go
Yeah.
forward now.
I mean, I think that's a lovely note to end on.
Yes.
Thank you all
Yeah.
so much. I loved speaking to you.
Thank
And,
you.
Thank you,
Um,
Claire. Thank you for
Thank
having
you for having
us.
us.
It was a very
Thank you.
insightful conversation.
Thank you very much for having all of us here.
Of
It
course.
was a wonderful session, and we really.
We're just happy we didn't start beating
Express
each other
ourselves.
up.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
would
it was
have been more
it's very
fun, huh? Don't you
peaceful.
think
So there was one thing which you wanted to ask us about the dream home.
The fun question? Yeah, we can do the fun
Oh
question.
yeah, let's do that.
We'll
Yeah,
have
why
to-
not?
We'll have to be a little quick, and also I
Sure.
don't want your answer to be light.
Okay.
That's my one requirement.
No answer to be like.
The light cannot be your answer to the question.
So what's
the
the question again?
is,
I don't
if
know.
you could design a room for dreams,
Room for
because,
dreams.
you know,
Okay.
we're in a dreamy space with no limitations, gravity,
Oh,
everything, doesn't matter. What would be the first element that you would put?
So I wake up in the morning, and if I open my window, I would like to see very peaceful world around, living in a harmony on the moon.
Nice.
On the moon.
Your
On the
window
moon.
on the moon.
Yes.
Okay, I call dibs on Mars. Is that okay? You go next.
I'm such an ugly
I wanted,
creature.
I wanted something cool place.
Yeah.
So the moon, I thought but most important is a
Peace.
peaceful and harmony, more matured world,
Peace and
without away from all this war and all these
Yes.
things, blah blah blah, all that.
Imagine.
Yes.
So, no, for me, I think I'm such an earthly creature. That's the fact that I'm born on this earth. And that's how we've discovered Mars and Moon, what we're talking about. The fact that as a human, you wake up every morning and you dream every day. You're doing the same thing every day in a different, with a different emotion every day. And I want to build a room which, when I wake up, it's just exuding a lot of positivity and good for the world. I think I believe in so much in positivity that I would notice a hole in a donut.
Yeah. I think for me, the room would be very simple. I would want to frame certain elements of Mother Earth or Mother Nature. I would want to have these apertures in the sky. I want to frame a horizon, a natural horizon, have these large openings, windows, frame the horizon, frame the trees, frame the sky. That's what, makes, let the nature orchestrate whatever I need to do in the room. It's as simple as that.
Thank you.
All right.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Thank you.